Hello, and welcome to the video series Cascade Reading Explorer View, summarizing texts. So to review, the Cascade format is based on four main principles. So after we isolate syntactic phrases, we then arrange them based on these four principles. Principle one is that subjects and verbs are always aligned. For example, in this sentence, after reading in Cascade, the students better understood the structure and the meaning of text. The subject of the sentence is the students, and the verb that goes along with that subject is better understood. And that's why we see these two lines at the same indent level. This is a cue for students and readers of all ages to figure out who did what. Principle two is that dependent information is indented. Dependent information refers to any information that describes something else in the sentence. For example, in Cascade describes the action of reading, and so is indented. And the entire direct object, the structure and the meaning of text, describes what is being understood, and so it appears indented underneath understood. And notice that of the text describes the structure and the meaning. The structure and meaning of what? Of the text. And so this information is indented underneath that as well. Principle three is very similar, except it says that introductory information is indented. So even if the information that describes something else appears before what it describes, it still gets indented just the same. For that reason, after reading in Cascade gets indented because it describes or sets the context for the students better understood. Lastly, principle four states that members of a conjunction are indented past the conjoining term. For example, the structure and the meaning. Here, the word and conjoins the structure and the meaning. And so the word and stays where it is, while the structure and the meaning both get indented one level past and. This makes it very easy to see what's getting conjoined by the word and. If you want to see these principles in more detail, I encourage you to watch our first video series. So when you have the Cascade format, there are various views with which you can show the Cascade format to readers and students. First, the reader view is a basic tool that allows you to transform any text into the Cascade format and then read it or export it as a PDF to have your students read it. The next view is the web view, and this is an extension that you can get for free for Chrome, and it takes any website and automatically cascades the text for you and also gets rid of a lot of distractions on the website like ads. Lastly, and the focus of the current video series, is the Explorer view. This not only allows you to transform text into the Cascade format like the reader view does, but it also allows you to add a lot more visual cues to grammar than this format alone can do. And let's dive into that a bit. So first of all, many students lack basic knowledge of grammar elements. Even adults struggle with these concepts. Parts of speech recognition is therefore critical for any explicit grammar instruction. People need to know at a minimum what a noun is, what a verb is, adjective, preposition, etc. And so the first tool in the Explorer toolkit is to help you highlight these parts of speech. And so you can choose whichever parts of speech are present in whatever text you put into the Explorer view. And you can automatically label these parts of speech. So for example, in the sentence, once upon a time in the small town of Sunnyvale, there lived a boy named Jake who had a true love for baseball. Here, we've highlighted nouns, prepositions, and verbs, but you can highlight whatever part of speech is relevant to your particular lesson or to your particular reader. Another option is to highlight syntactic groups. Some concepts beyond parts of speech are especially difficult for students to understand. This is because they require an understanding of how words relate to one another in a sentence. The Cascade format does some of this visual cueing via indentations, but sometimes a more explicit tool is helpful. For example, we need to be able to explain why something is indented, if it is indented. And so another tool in the toolkit is this syntactic group identification, where you can identify the subject, predicate, prepositional phrases, direct objects, indirect objects. So for example, in this sentence, the tryouts are taking place at Sunnyvale Stadium, a place where many great athletes had once owned their own skills. Here, The tryouts and many great athletes are two subjects in different clauses. And so notice that they both have the marking over it saying subject. Similarly, you might be interested in cueing direct objects. A direct object is an example of a phrase that gets indented. And so this can help readers understand why place and their skills are indented underneath the verb. It can also help if you're describing what a direct object is for the first time to students who may not know this concept yet. There are personalization tools similar to what you see in the reader view. For example, you can choose to have alignment lines or to not have alignment lines, to set them on a gradient and grayscale, to have sentences displayed in individual pages, and to change the font size. There are also copy and print tools just like the reader view. So say that you want to export as a PDF so that your students can read passages for their assignments, but have all of these highlights in there to help them read. That's perfectly doable. And we also have tools like clause colorization. This tool allows you to automatically represent different clauses with different colors. It also makes it so that lighter shades show structurally optional elements of the sentence. You can also expand and collapse the sentence. This is a useful tool for simplifying and rebuilding sentences by manipulating whether to show optional clauses or elements. Using clause colorization and expand and collapse is a great connection between reading and writing. So not only can you help your students better understand complex sentences, but you can also help them become better writers and better able to use those complex sentences in their own writing. And so let's dive a little bit further into each of these tools. So for example, colorized clauses. In the sentence, the man that the woman saw fed the cat, this could confuse some readers. For example, some readers have trouble figuring out who fed the cat and who saw whom in this sentence. In the Cascade format, some of this is made easier via indentations. The man that the woman saw fed the cat. Notice that the man is aligned with fed, so you know that the man did the feeding. And who saw whom? The woman saw. Notice that that is indented, meaning the woman is doing the seeing, and that, which represents the man, is indented past saw. So this is rather complex, and even though it's a visual cue apparent in the Cascade format, it might be difficult to explicitly understand when students are just for the first time getting used to the Cascade format. By colorizing the clause like this, it might make it easier for students to understand that the woman saw is different than the man fed. It's adding just another cue to help students isolate the clauses and the information that's happening in each of those clauses. Similarly, we can expand and collapse sentences as well. So if we take that colorized clause sentence from the man that the woman saw fed the cat, we can simplify this to just say the man fed the cat. We can do this because that the woman saw doesn't actually change the structure of the sentence. What it does is it describes the man. It's the man that the woman saw. And so the main idea of this sentence is that the man fed the cat. And so what we can do is simplify this by clicking an arrow that gets rid of this subordinate clause that the woman saw. And so now we just see the man fed the cat. And similarly, you can go back and see the entire thing again. The man that the woman saw fed the cat. And so this not only allows students to focus in on the main ideas of sentences, but it also helps them understand how more complex sentences can be formed. Take this sentence, for example. The principal noticed that the janitor who cleaned in the classroom left quickly after the last announcement. There's a lot going on here, but we can simplify it to the principal noticed that the janitor who cleaned left quickly after the last announcement. Further to the principal noticed that the janitor left quickly after the last announcement. Even further to the principal noticed that the janitor left. Now suddenly this is a lot more easy to understand the main concept of the sentence. And what can be particularly helpful is to start at this core sentence and work backwards to get more and more complex information. So the principal noticed that the janitor left. The principal noticed that the janitor left quickly after the last announcement. Now we get more information about left. The principal noticed that the janitor, who cleaned, left quickly after the last announcement. Now we have more information about the janitor. It's the janitor that cleaned. The principal noticed that the janitor who cleaned in the classroom left quickly after the last announcement. Now we get the full sentence where we understand where the cleaning happened. It happened in the classroom. And so this can be a useful tool for getting your students to be able to understand more complex sentences and to be able to write them better. To conclude this video, I want to share an idea for a lesson that involves summarizing text using the Explorer view. For example, you could share a reading passage with students and have them read silently in the Cascade format. When they're first doing this, make sure to not have anything selected in the Explorer view. Make sure it's just the text with the Cascade format. Then have students try their best to convey the main ideas in the text. Have them write a summary of what it is they read. And make sure you save their responses. Then ask students to reread this passage, but this time use clause colorization, allow students to expand and collapse sentences, and maybe mark nouns and verbs or anything else that you've found they have trouble understanding. Also, instruct them to look at how colors are separated in sentences, and encourage them to expand and collapse for longer, more complex sentences until they really understand what the sentence is saying. Lastly, tell them to focus on core elements of text. After this second attempt at reading, summarize again and compare the results. How did the summaries in the second task differ from those in the first? You can use these findings and these differences to drive discussion with your students. So try it out. We would love to hear feedback and we would love to hear other ideas or tips for how you made this work in your classroom. Stay tuned for the next lesson in the Explorer series, which will be about forming complex sentences with the Explorer view.